Now let's begin. The transport rattled as it touched down at Joint Base Lewis McChord, and Douglas Johnson felt every bone in his body protest the 14-hour flight from Kandahar. 36 years old, 11 years in the Army, and he still couldn't sleep on planes. The fluorescent lights of the terminal burned his eyes as he shouldered his duffel and headed for the exit, his mind already home. His commander had pulled him aside 3 days ago with that look, the one that meant family emergency. Your neighbor called the Red Cross, Major Hendricks had said, sliding the leave papers across the desk. Something about your daughter. Get home, Johnson. Casey Mann, his team sergeant, had driven him to the airfield. Whatever it is, brother, you handle it. We got your back when you return. The certainty in Casey's voice had anchored him through the endless flight, through the layover in Germany, through the crushing anxiety that his 7-year-old daughter Sophie needed him, and he'd been 8,000 miles away. Douglas had met Pamela Johnson 9 years ago at a friend's wedding in Tacoma. She'd been beautiful, soft-spoken, attentive. They married 6 months later. Too fast, his mother had warned. But Douglas had been young and deploying to Iraq and wanted something permanent to come home to. Sophie arrived a year later, a bright-eyed miracle who became his entire world. But Pamela had changed after Sophie's birth. Withdrew. Started spending more time with her mother, Lorraine Banks, a sharp-featured woman who'd never hidden her disdain for Douglas's military career. Government killer, she called him once at Thanksgiving, smiling like it was a joke. Pamela had laughed along. The rental car smelled like cheap air freshener. Douglas programmed his home address into the GPS, 2847 Maple Ridge Drive, and started driving. It was 0200 hours, February cold seeping through the heating vents. He'd wanted to call ahead, surprise Sophie in the morning with pancakes like he always did on leave. But something in Major Hendricks's tone had killed that plan. The neighborhood was dark when he arrived, streetlights casting orange pools on frost-covered lawns. His house, a modest 2-story he'd bought with his deployment bonuses, sat quiet. One light burned in an upstairs window. Lorraine and her husband Roy had moved in 2 years ago when Roy lost his job. Temporary, Pamela had promised. They'd never left. Douglas pulled into the driveway, killed the engine, and sat for a moment in the sudden silence. Then he saw it. A small shape on the porch, covered in newspaper. His body moved before his brain caught up, training overriding the shock. He was out of the car, across the lawn, dropping to his knees beside the tiny bundle. The newspapers rustled as he pulled them away with shaking hands. Sophie, his daughter, lay curled on the wooden porch, wearing thin pajamas and no coat. No shoes. Her lips had a blue tinge in the porch light. The outdoor thermometer read 28 degrees Fahrenheit. Sophie, baby, wake up. Douglas scooped her into his arms, and she stirred, mumbling something incoherent. Her skin was ice against his neck. He carried her to the rental car, cranked the heat to maximum, wrapped her in his jacket and the emergency blanket from the trunk. Her eyes fluttered open as warmth flooded the vehicle. Daddy. Her voice was small, confused. You're home. Yeah, baby. I'm home. His voice didn't shake. Wouldn't let it. Why were you outside? Sophie's face crumpled. Grandma Lorraine said the house is only for real family. She said I had to sleep outside until I learned to be grateful. Tears tracked down her reddened cheeks. Mom said Grandma was right, that I was being difficult. Something cold and terrible settled in Douglas's chest, colder than the February night. How many times, Sophie? 3 times this week. She was crying harder now, and he held her, feeling her little body shake. I'm sorry, Daddy. I tried to be good. I tried really hard. You didn't do anything wrong. He kissed her forehead, her frozen hands. You're perfect. You hear me? Perfect. He got Sophie buckled in, turned the seat warmer on, made sure the heat was still blasting. Stay here, baby. Lock the doors. I'll be right back. Daddy, don't be mad at them. Please. Sophie's eyes were wide, frightened. Grandma says you'll leave again if I cause trouble. Douglas looked at his daughter, 7 years old, and already trained to protect her abusers. The cold thing in his chest turned to ice. I'm not going anywhere, he said. Not anymore. He walked to the front door, used his key. The house was warm, too warm, heat pumping through the vents. Family photos lined the hallway, mostly of Pamela and Lorraine, a few of Sophie as a baby. None of him. His wedding photo was gone. Upstairs, the master bedroom door was open. Pamela slept in their bed, covers pulled to her chin. The guest room where Lorraine and Roy stayed glowed with a nightlight. Douglas stood in the hallway and felt 11 years of discipline, of following orders, of being the good soldier crack apart. His daughter had been outside in 28-degree weather while these people slept in heated comfort. While his mother-in-law, who'd called him a killer, who'd undermined his marriage, who'd turned his wife into a stranger, had deemed his child unworthy of basic human decency. He walked into the master bedroom and turned on every light. Pamela jolted awake, squinting against the brightness. "Douglas? What? When did you?" "Get up." Something in his voice brought her fully conscious. She sat up, clutching the blanket. "You didn't call. You can't just." "I said get up." "Living room. Now." He moved to the guest room. Lorraine Banks lay propped on pillows, a sleep mask over her eyes, earplugs visible. Roy snored beside her. Douglas ripped the mask off. Lorraine shrieked, flailing. "What the hell, Douglas? How dare you? Living room. Both of you. Now. You have no right to barge in here. This is my house." His voice was quiet, controlled, more frightening than shouting. "You have 30 seconds. He left them scrambling and went back downstairs. Checked on Sophie through the window. She was curled in the car's seat, eyes closed, finally warm. He pulled out his phone and made 3 calls. The first to Casey Mann. The second to Mitchell Willard, a lawyer he'd met at a veterans support group. The third to Vicky Stratton, the neighbor who'd called the Red Cross. "Thank God you got home," Vicky whispered when she answered. "Douglas, I've been documenting everything. Photos, dates, times. I didn't know what else to do. Send them to me. All of it." Pamela appeared first, wrapped in a robe, eyes red. Then Lorraine, imperious even in her nightgown, with Roy shuffling behind. They arranged themselves on the couch like an audience waiting for a show. "Do you know where I found our daughter?" Douglas asked Pamela. She had the grace to look away. Mom said, "Do you know where I found Sophie?" She was being difficult. "On the porch, covered in newspaper, in 28-degree weather." He turned to Lorraine. "You locked a 7-year-old child outside in freezing temperatures." Lorraine's chin lifted. She needed to learn discipline. "You're never here. Someone has to raise her properly." "Raise her?" Douglas's laugh was sharp, humorless. "You left her to freeze." "Don't be dramatic. It was barely below freezing. 28 degrees. For how long?" Sophie said this was the 3rd time this week. Pamela stood, hands twisting together. "Douglas, you don't understand. You're always gone. Mom has been helping me, and Sophie has been so difficult lately. Talking back, not doing her chores. She's 7. Exactly. Old enough to learn respect." Lorraine crossed her arms. "We've been managing this household while you play soldier overseas. You have no idea what we've been dealing with." The ice in Douglas's chest spread, numbing. He'd spent 11 years serving his country. Missed birthdays and Christmases and first days of school. Trusted his wife to care for their daughter. And this was what he'd come home to. "Here's what's going to happen," he said quietly. "You have 72 hours. Roy spoke for the first time. 72 hours for what? Douglas smiled, and all 3 of them flinched. "To find out." Morning came with weak winter sunlight and the smell of coffee from the diner down the street. Douglas had checked them into a hotel, him and Sophie in one room, warm and safe. She'd slept curled against him, whimpering occasionally, and each sound had hammered another nail into his resolve. Now she sat across from him in a booth, picking at pancakes. Her favorite breakfast, but she barely ate. "Am I in trouble?" she asked finally. "No, baby. Never." But Grandma Lorraine said. Grandma Lorraine was wrong. Douglas reached across the table, took her small hand. "Listen to me, Sophie. Adults are supposed to protect kids. Keep them safe and warm and loved. What Grandma did, what Mom allowed, that wasn't okay. None of it was your fault." Sophie's eyes filled with tears. "But Mom said I was being bad, that I make things hard for her." Douglas felt something break inside him, something that had been cracking for years. "Your mom is confused right now, but I'm not. And I promise you, things are going to change." His phone buzzed. Casey Mann, landed at SeaTac. "Where do you need me?" Douglas typed back an address and turned to Sophie. "How do you feel about meeting Uncle Casey? He's my friend from the Army." Sophie brightened slightly. "The one who sends me those funny cards." "That's him." Casey showed up 40 minutes later, a wall of muscle in civilian clothes with a Ranger's tattoo visible on his forearm. He took one look at Sophie's pale face and Douglas's expression and knew. "What do you need?" Casey asked when Sophie went to the bathroom. Backup. And a witness. Douglas slid his phone across the table, showing him Vicky's photos. Sophie sleeping on the porch, bundled in newspapers. Dated entries going back weeks. I'm going to destroy them, Case. I need someone to make sure I don't actually kill them. Casey studied the photos, jaw tightening. Jesus Christ. 72 hours. I told them they had 72 hours. To do what? Douglas's smile was arctic. They don't know yet, but they're going to spend every second terrified, wondering what's coming. Psychological warfare. Learn from the best. Mitchell Willard met them at his office that afternoon, a small practice near Joint Base Lewis McChord that specialized in family law and veteran affairs. He was 50, gray-haired, with the steady eyes of someone who'd seen the worst of humanity and still showed up to work. I've already filed for emergency custody, Mitchell said, spreading papers across his desk. With these photos and Vicky Stratton's testimony, plus your daughter's medical examination. Medical examination? Douglas interrupted. I took the liberty of calling a pediatrician friend. She saw Sophie this morning. Signs of exposure, mild frostbite on her toes, evidence of chronic stress. Mitchell's expression hardened. And bruises. Old ones. Your mother-in-law has been physical. The ice in Douglas's chest turned to fire. She never said. Sophie never told me. Kids protect their abusers, especially when they're told it's love. Mitchell pulled out another file. There's more. Your wife has been withdrawing money from your joint accounts. Substantial amounts. Nearly $50,000 over the last year. Douglas stared at the bank statements. Withdrawals every week, sometimes twice a week. All while he'd been deployed, sending his combat pay home, trusting Pamela to manage their finances. Where did it go? I'm working on that. But there's a paper trail. Mitchell leaned back. Douglas, I need to ask. How far are you willing to take this? As far as it needs to go. Even if it means your wife faces criminal charges. Douglas thought of Sophie's blue-tinged lips, her small voice saying, I tried to be good. Especially then. Casey drove them back to the hotel while Douglas sat in the passenger seat, mind racing. 11 years he'd been gone, on and off. 11 years of trusting Pamela, of believing she had their daughter's best interests at heart. And Lorraine Banks had been there the whole time, poison in his house, turning his wife against him, abusing his child. What's the play? Casey asked. I want them paranoid. Scared. I want them to tear each other apart wondering what I'm planning. And then I spring the trap. They checked on Sophie, safe with Vicky Stratton, who'd agreed to watch her. The older woman had tears in her eyes when she'd seen Sophie that morning. I called the Red Cross the second I got the photos, Vicky said. I didn't know what else to do. Your wife, Pamela, used to be such a sweet girl. But after her mother moved in, she shook her head. Lorraine Banks is poison, Douglas. Pure poison. That evening, Douglas went back to the house. Alone. The lights were on, figures moving behind the curtains. He didn't knock. Used his key. Walked in like he owned the place. Because he did. Lorraine was in the kitchen, phone pressed to her ear. She went silent when she saw him, ended the call abruptly. You can't keep coming here unannounced. My name is on the deed. I can come whenever I want. Douglas leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Who were you calling? None of your business. Everything about this house is my business. He smiled. 48 hours left. Her face went white. What are you planning? You'll find out. He found Pamela in the living room, laptop open. She closed it quickly when he entered. Too quickly. Working on something? He asked mildly. Just emails. Show me. Douglas, this is ridiculous. He walked over, flipped open the laptop. Emails to a lawyer. Divorce papers, half-drafted. Filed 3 weeks ago. You were going to divorce me, he said flatly. Pamela's face crumpled. Mom said it was for the best. That you were never really part of this family anyway. That Sophie and I would be better off. Better off? Douglas's voice went dangerously quiet. Better off with a woman who locks children outside in winter? Better off bleeding my bank accounts dry. I don't know what you're talking about. $50,000, Pamela. Where is it? She went silent, eyes darting to the kitchen where Lorraine stood frozen. 48 hours, Douglas repeated. He walked to the door, paused. Oh, and Pamela? Those divorce papers? File them. I'll make it easy for you. He left them there, fear thick in the air. Day 2 of his 72-hour countdown, and Douglas Johnson was a man on a mission. He started at the county records office, pulling every document related to Lorraine Banks and Roy Hoover. Marriage license, property records, financial statements from Roy's failed business. What he found made him smile. Mitchell Willard called at noon. I found the money trail. Your $50,000 went to a joint account in Lorraine's and Pamela's names. They've been making payments on a condo in Bellevue. A condo, purchased 8 months ago. My guess? Lorraine was planning to move herself, Pamela, and Sophie out of your house. Leave you with nothing when you got back from deployment. Douglas leaned back in the hotel chair, watching Sophie color at the desk. His daughter, who they'd planned to steal from him. What else? Roy Hoover has a record. DUI from 6 years ago. Domestic disturbance call from a previous marriage. Charges dropped, but it's documented. And here's the interesting part. Lorraine Banks isn't his wife. Douglas sat forward. What? They never legally married. She's still married to her previous husband, Sophie's biological grandfather. Guy named Harold Banks, living in Arizona. They separated but never divorced. Which means Lorraine and Roy are technically just cohabitants. Which means they have no legal claim to stay in my house. Exactly. Douglas made more calls. To his commander, requesting an extension of his emergency leave. To CPS, Child Protective Services, where Dina Sanford, a caseworker, agreed to open an investigation based on Vicky's photos and the pediatrician's report. To his bank, freezing all joint accounts. Then he went to visit someone Pamela had mentioned over the years, but he'd never met. Nadine Paul, Lorraine's best friend. Nadine lived in a townhouse near the mall, and she answered the door with a cigarette in hand and suspicion in her eyes. You're Douglas. And you're Nadine, Lorraine's friend. What do you want? To talk. 5 minutes. She let him in, grudgingly. The townhouse smelled like smoke and cats. Photos covered the mantel, Nadine and Lorraine, young and laughing. More recent ones showed the strain of age. I know what Lorraine did, Douglas said without preamble. To my daughter. I know about the money, the secret condo, the plan to leave me with nothing. Nadine's face went carefully neutral. Lorraine's had a hard life. Lost her first husband, struggled to raise Pamela alone. She didn't lose Harold. She left him. That got a reaction. Nadine blinked. What? Harold Banks is alive and well in Arizona. They're still married. Which means everything she's told you, told Pamela, told everyone. It's a lie. Nadine sat down heavily. That can't be right. Douglas pulled out his phone, showed her the records. Marriage license from 1985. No divorce decree. Harold Banks's current address and phone number. She told me he died, Nadine whispered. Cancer. Said she was a widow. She's a liar. And she's been using my wife, manipulating her, stealing from me, and abusing my daughter. Douglas leaned forward. Here's what I'm offering you, Nadine. Tell me everything you know about Lorraine's plans, and I'll keep your name out of it when this goes public. Goes public. I'm destroying her. Completely. But I need ammunition. Nadine studied him for a long moment. Then she started talking. Lorraine Banks had been planning this for 2 years. Ever since Douglas's last deployment, she'd been working on Pamela, convincing her that Douglas was a bad husband, a negligent father, someone who cared more about the army than his family. She'd encouraged the divorce, helped forge the papers, managed the secret account. She was obsessed with Sophie, Nadine said quietly. Used to say Sophie needed to be broken before she could be built back upright. That's why. She trailed off. Why she put her outside. Lorraine called it toughening up. Said kids these days were too soft. Nadine crushed out her cigarette. I told her she was going too far. We fought about it. Haven't spoken in a week. Good. Keep it that way. Douglas stood. When this comes down, and people ask, you tell them the truth. That you tried to stop her. He left Nadine there, shaking, and returned to the hotel, where Casey was teaching Sophie how to play poker with M&Ms. Uncle Casey says I'm really good at bluffing, Sophie announced proudly. That's my girl. Douglas kissed her head, and over it, met Casey's eyes. Tomorrow? Casey asked. Tomorrow. That night, Douglas lay awake planning. 48 hours had passed. 24 remained. He'd gathered evidence, frozen assets, filed legal papers, and turned Lorraine's best friend into a witness. Now came the final piece. He called Harold Banks in Arizona. Mr. Banks? My name is Douglas Johnson. I'm married to your daughter, Pamela. There was a long pause. Pamela, is she all right? Physically, yes. But I need to talk to you about your wife, Lorraine. Ex-wife, Harold corrected. where she should be. We've been separated for 20 years, but never divorced. No, she refused. Said she'd take me for everything if I pushed it. So I let it go, moved on with my life. Harold sighed. Why are you calling me, son? Douglas told him. Everything. The abuse, the manipulation, the illegal marriage to Roy, the stolen money, the plan to take Sophie. When he finished, Harold was silent for so long Douglas thought the connection had dropped. Mr. Banks, I'm here. God. I knew Lorraine was troubled, but this. He exhaled shakily. What can I do? Come to Washington. Tomorrow. I need you to file charges against Lorraine for bigamy, and I need you to testify about her character. I'll be on the first flight. Douglas hung up and smiled in the darkness. All the pieces were in place. Tomorrow, the trap would snap shut. Hour 72 arrived with gray skies and the promise of snow. Douglas stood in the driveway of his house, not theirs, with Casey on his left and Harold Banks on his right. Behind them, Mitchell Willard waited with a folder of legal documents. A police car idled at the curb. Douglas knocked on his own door. Waited. Lorraine opened it, eyes wild, hair uncombed. She hadn't slept, he could tell. Good. Time's up, Douglas said. You can't do this. You can't just. She saw Harold and went white. What is he doing here? Hello, Lorraine, Harold said mildly. 20 years. You're looking well. Roy appeared behind Lorraine, confusion on his face. Who's this? I'm her husband, Harold said. The real one. Pamela emerged from the living room, and Douglas felt a flicker of something that might have been pity. She looked terrible, drawn, exhausted, scared. Douglas, please. Can we just talk? We're done talking. Mitchell, the lawyer stepped forward. Lorraine Banks, you're being served with several legal documents. First, a bigamy charge filed by Harold Banks. Second, a restraining order preventing you from contact with Sophie Johnson. Third, an eviction notice. You have 48 hours to vacate this property. You can't evict me. This is my daughter's house. This is Douglas Johnson's house, Mitchell corrected. He owns it. You and Roy Hoover are unlawful occupants with no legal rights to residency. The police officer moved forward. Ma'am, I also have a warrant for your arrest. Child endangerment and theft. Lorraine's face went purple. This is insane. Pamela, tell them. But Pamela was staring at her mother like she'd never seen her before. You're still married to Dad? It's complicated. You told me he was dead. You said, Pamela's voice broke. All these years, you said he was dead. I protected you. From him, from Douglas, from everyone who wanted to take you away from me. Lorraine turned to Douglas, spitting fury. This is what you do? Destroy your own family. You destroyed my family. Douglas's voice was ice. The moment you decided my daughter wasn't worth basic human decency. The moment you turned my wife into your puppet. The moment you stole from me and planned to leave me with nothing. I was helping Pamela see the truth. That you're never here, that you don't care about them. I was serving my country, and I trusted the woman I married to protect our child. He turned to Pamela. I loved you. I thought you loved me. But you chose your mother over our daughter. You let her abuse Sophie. You stole from me. You filed for divorce while I was in a combat zone. Pamela was crying now, makeup running. She said it was for the best. That Sophie needed discipline. That you were the problem. And you believed her. Douglas shook his head. The divorce papers? They're real now. Mitchell filed them this morning. You'll be hearing from the court. The police officer moved to handcuff Lorraine, and she fought, screaming about injustice and ungrateful children and government thugs. Roy tried to intervene, and the officer calmly informed him that he could be arrested for obstruction. Harold watched his ex-wife being loaded into the police car with something like sadness. I tried to warn people about her, he said quietly. No one ever listened. Douglas put a hand on his shoulder. I'm listening now. Mitchell handled the rest, serving Roy with eviction papers, explaining to Pamela that she had 72 hours to remove her belongings before the locks were changed, documenting everything for the courts. Pamela stood in the doorway of what used to be her home, broken. Can I see Sophie? Please. Eventually. Under supervision. If you get help. Douglas met her eyes. I don't hate you, Pamela. But I don't trust you. And until you prove you can put our daughter first, you won't be alone with her. She's my daughter too. Then act like it. He left her there and drove back to the hotel where Sophie waited with Vicky. His daughter ran to him, threw her arms around his waist. Is it over, Daddy? Not yet, baby. But soon, the custody hearing happened 2 weeks later. Douglas had extended his leave, using every favor owed to him, every connection made in 11 years of service. Mitchell Willard presented the evidence methodically: photos, medical records, bank statements, testimony from Vicky Stratton and Dina Sanford from CPS, character witnesses from Douglas's unit. Pamela sat at the defendant's table with a court-appointed lawyer, looking lost. Lorraine was still in jail, denied bail after her outburst at the arraignment. Roy had disappeared. Word was he'd gone to Montana to stay with family. Harold Banks testified about Lorraine's history of manipulation and abuse, her pattern of controlling behavior, her refusal to accept responsibility. The judge listened, stone-faced. Then Sophie testified. The judge had brought her into chambers, just the two of them and a court reporter. Douglas waited outside, Casey beside him. "She's a strong kid," Casey said. "Takes after her old man." When Sophie emerged, she was crying, but she walked straight to Douglas and held his hand. The judge returned to the bench. "I've reviewed all evidence and heard testimony from all parties. In the matter of custody of Sophie Marie Johnson, I'm granting full physical and legal custody to Douglas Johnson, effective immediately." Douglas felt his knees weaken with relief. Ms. Johnson will be granted supervised visitation, pending completion of a parenting course and psychological evaluation. Lorraine Banks is prohibited from any contact with the minor child. This court also recommends prosecution for child endangerment, theft, and bigamy proceed to the fullest extent of the law. The gavel fell. Outside the courthouse, Sophie held Douglas's hand and Harold's. The older man had decided to stay in Washington, reconnect with Pamela if she'd let him, be part of his granddaughter's life. "Thank you," Douglas said to him, "for coming, for testifying. I should have done it years ago. Should have fought harder for Pamela when she was young." Harold looked at Sophie. "But maybe I can make up for it now. Be the grandfather this little one deserves." Sophie beamed up at him. "Can I call you Grandpa Harold?" "I'd be honored, sweetheart." Mitchell appeared with final papers. "The house is officially yours again, locks changed." Lorraine took a plea deal, 3 years for the endangerment and theft charges, suspended sentence on the bigamy if she cooperates with the divorce from Harold. She'll be out in 18 months with good behavior. And Pamela? No criminal charges. But she's agreed to the custody arrangement and the divorce terms. Mitchell paused. She asked if she could write to Sophie. "I said I'd ask you." Douglas looked down at his daughter. "What do you think, baby? Do you want letters from Mom?" Sophie bit her lip, thinking hard. "Only if she says sorry. And means it." "Smart girl." Douglas lifted her onto his shoulders. "Come on. Let's go home." Home. The word felt right for the first time in years. 6 months passed like water flowing downhill, fast at first, then settling into a steady rhythm. Douglas had transferred to Joint Base Lewis McChord permanently, taking a training position that kept him stateside. No more deployments. No more missed birthdays. No more leaving Sophie. The house had changed. Pamela's things were gone, packed and stored at Harold's new apartment. The walls got repainted. Sophie chose lavender for her room. Photos went up, Douglas in uniform, Sophie at her second-grade play, the two of them at the beach. Harold joined them for Sunday dinners. Casey became Uncle Casey officially, teaching Sophie terrible jokes and how to throw a proper punch. Pamela's supervised visits happened twice a month at a family center downtown. She was trying, Douglas could see it. Therapy, parenting classes, distance from her mother. She'd written Sophie 3 letters. The first 2 Sophie had read and thrown away. The third she'd kept. "Mom says she's sorry," Sophie told Douglas one night at bedtime. "She says she was confused." "Do you believe her?" Sophie thought about it seriously. "Maybe, but I'm not ready to forgive her yet." "That's okay. Forgiveness takes time." "Do you forgive her, Daddy?" Douglas tucked the blanket around his daughter. "I'm working on it. But my job is to protect you, not to forgive people who hurt you. You get to decide when you're ready. I like it better now. Just us." Sophie yawned. "And Grandpa Harold. And Uncle Casey." "Me too, baby." Mitchell called in August with news. Lorraine's parole hearing is next month. They're likely to release her early. Overcrowding. Does she stay away from Sophie? The restraining order is permanent. If she violates it, she goes back to prison. Mitchell paused. "She's been writing letters. To Pamela. I thought you should know." Douglas felt the old anger stir, but pushed it down. "Pamela's an adult. She can make her own choices. You're more forgiving than I'd be." "I'm not forgiving." I'm just done letting Lorraine Banks take up space in my head. Pamela showed up unexpectedly one Saturday in September. Douglas answered the door to find her standing on the porch, the same porch where he'd found Sophie that frozen night, holding a small gift bag. I don't have a visit scheduled, she said nervously. I know. I wanted to give Sophie something. For her birthday. It's next week. Douglas took the bag. I'll give it to her. Pamela hesitated. Can I ask you something? Go ahead. Do you think she'll ever forgive me? Really forgive me? Douglas looked at the woman he'd married, the mother of his child. She looked different now, thinner, sadder, but also somehow more present. Like she'd woken up from a long sleep. I don't know, he said honestly. But if you keep showing up, keep doing the work, keep proving you've changed, maybe. Sophie's got a big heart. Like her dad. She's better than both of us. Pamela's eyes filled with tears. I'm so sorry, Douglas. For all of it. I let my mother poison me against you. Against our life. Against our daughter. I don't expect you to forgive me. But I need you to know I'm sorry. I know. Douglas shifted the gift bag. For what it's worth, Pamela, I hope you find peace. I really do. Thank you. She turned to leave, then stopped. Are you happy? Douglas thought about Sophie's laughter, Harold's bad puns at Sunday dinner, Casey's terrible jokes, the way his daughter ran to him every day after school without fear. Yeah, he said. I am. Sophie's 8th birthday party was everything Douglas had promised. Bouncy castle, pizza, ice cream cake, and more presents than one kid could possibly need. Harold brought a giant stuffed unicorn. Casey brought a remote control helicopter that Douglas knew he'd regret. Vicky Stratton came with her husband, bringing homemade cookies. Sophie opened Pamela's gift in the afternoon when the other kids had gone home. It was a photo album, carefully assembled. Pictures of Sophie as a baby, as a toddler, with Douglas in his uniform, with Pamela before everything went wrong. A family that had existed once, briefly, before Lorraine Banks poisoned it. The last page had a letter. Dear Sophie, Douglas read aloud at his daughter's request. I know I can't take back the things I did. I know I hurt you and scared you and let you down when you needed me most. Your daddy saved you because that's what daddies do. They protect the people they love, even when it's hard, even when it costs them everything. I forgot that. I forgot what being a mom really means. I'm learning now. I'm trying. I hope someday you'll let me show you how much I've changed. But if you don't, I understand. You're the best thing I ever did, and I'm sorry I almost ruined you. Love, Mom. Sophie was quiet for a long time. Then she closed the album carefully and put it on her shelf. It's a nice present, she said. Maybe next time I'll write back. Maybe, Douglas agreed. That night, after Sophie was asleep, Douglas stood on the porch where he'd found his daughter 8 months ago. The neighborhood was quiet, autumn leaves rustling in the breeze. No newspapers on the porch now. No child left in the cold. His phone buzzed. Casey, heard Lorraine got paroled. You good? Douglas typed back. She stays away from Sophie. I don't care what she does. Casey, and if she doesn't stay away? Douglas smiled in the darkness. Then she finds out I didn't use all 72 hours last time. But he knew Lorraine wouldn't come near them. The restraining order was one thing. The fear was another. He'd seen it in her eyes at the trial. The realization that she'd pushed too far, hurt the wrong person's child, and faced a reckoning she'd never expected. Some people learned from consequences. Some didn't. But either way, they learned to stay away. The door opened behind him. Sophie, in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes. Daddy? Why are you outside? Just thinking, baby. About what? He picked her up, even though she was getting big for it. Held her close. About how lucky I am. Because you found me that night. Because you're mine. He kissed her forehead. And nothing's ever going to change that. Sophie hugged him tight. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, baby. Forever. He carried her back inside, locked the door, and tucked her into bed. The house was quiet, safe, warm. His daughter was safe. His family, the real one, the one built on love and loyalty, was intact. It had taken 72 hours to dismantle Lorraine Banks's world. It had taken 6 months to rebuild his own. And it would take a lifetime to make sure Sophie knew she was loved, protected, valued. But Douglas Johnson had time now. All the time in the world. And he wasn't going anywhere. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.